Yes.
depending on your interpretation and reinterpretation of the circumstances. He was the victim of a unfortunate incident. He was also the victim of some possible bullying, etc., by his older half brother.
And
I think there is that, and again, as the rabbi could provide this probably, but there is quite a bit of midrash about Isaac, but I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of the head what that is, because there aren't a lot of details of
that's
childhood
right.
provided.
And because of that, there we have to refer to different midrashic stories. One of which is that when Isaac is upon the altar, that he understands at that time about faith in God, and that because of also his faith in God, not just Abraham's faith in God, that God spares both. God spares both, and at the same time, Isaac becomes a very passive and introverted individual, very humble individual. But as we'll find out, not always so. But he does know the history of his family. And that's going to come out in what we're going to be reading. So I thought first, let's unless somebody has any other comments about it. Yes, Joanne. And then Larry.
One of the things that I'm not certain I heard mentioned, but I've always looked at that story as how Abraham, and through this act, and Isaac understood that the children should not be slaughtered, but instead an animal for a sacrifice. And I think that is huge. That's how I've always, if you had asked me before we read all this and did Midrash, etc., that would have been my answer.
Okay.
Isaac and Abraham taught me and taught the people around not to kill their infants.
Okay, we had really discussed that last week in part. Okay. So yes, but we're sort of trying to get into the head of Isaac.
Yes.
What is going on in this story? Yes, Larry.
I wanted to add that we also discussed the fact that Isaac did not speak to his father after this incident.
Right.
That is midrashic. And there's a lot of different stories which include that. Okay, that it changes his personality, would you like to expand on that in any way?
I think I have the image of them walking up together and coming down separately. And
yes, that's pointed out, yes.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Whether then, if he rejects his father, how much does he still adhere to his father's beliefs? If the separation physically, emotionally, does it go along with, spiritually?
Right. I would agree. Before I recognize Gail, I just wanted to ask if is it necessary for the Torah to talk about that, or is it just another empty space that we have to come up with, depending on the age within which we live? I don't know. I wish the rabbi were here to help us out in that regard, because there are a lot of empty spaces as we read during the lifetime. You know, if you go through a biography of someone, I'm using this as an example. If you go through any biography, it doesn't go in necessarily in order. It doesn't necessarily have to go year by year. It usually highlights certain what is felt to be important milestones in the life of someone. And so I wonder if that is what we're reading here also. That's another way of looking at this, I think, anyway. Okay, first Gail, and then Helene.
I have to apologize. I had some technical issues, so I'm a little late coming in. Are we at 24, chapter 24?
Chapter 24, verse 1. We haven't started it yet.
Oh, okay.
We're sort of laying the groundwork for this so we get to know more about Isaac.
Okay, well then I'll wait till you start because I have a comment on that opening. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Yes, Helene.
Well, it doesn't really matter whose biography you're reading. The issue for a child is basic trust. And without basic trust, I'm not surprised at all that he didn't talk to his father, or, you know, he could have accepted certainly God and the beliefs, but his father, no, the trust has to be earned, and it wasn't earned. So that's all I wanted to say. Basic.
Spoken as a good child psychologist.
I'm not a psychologist, I'm an educator. And
Educator.
Childhood is mine. And it's so clear.
Yes.
It's the first stage of every religion, trust versus mistrust. If
Yes.
the child isn't comfortable growing and learning and making mistakes,
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Marty.
Yes, Michael.
Oh yeah. Just as I was listening, and you mentioned that things are not always in order, and things may not follow what preceded or what's coming. That in itself may create the empty space because of the fact things are not always in order.
Okay, that's another way. That's another approach. Yes, very good. Any further discussion here, or should we go ahead and proceed into the story? I take it by no hands being raised, we can start. So if somebody has one of the Humash or whatever book you're reading, it would be Genesis 24, verse 1.
Okay, I'll read. This is from Hertz.
Okay.
Abraham was old, well stricken in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said unto his servant, the elder of his house, that ruled over all that he had, in quotes, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife for my son of the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell. Should I stop here?
Well, that's half of the sentence.
Okay.
Why don't you finish?
I shall go into my country and to my kindred and take a wife for my son, even for Isaac. And the servant said unto him, peradventure the woman will not be willing to follow me unto this land, must I needs bring thy son back unto the land from whence thou camest? And Abraham said unto him, beware thou that thou bring not my son back thither. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my nativity, and who spoke unto me, and who swore unto me, saying, unto thy seed will I give thee this land. He will send his angel before thee, and thou shalt take a wife for my son from thence. Keep going.
Uh, yeah, we can stop here. It doesn't make any difference. That's perfectly okay. So what first, did you have any comments, Larry?
Okay. Okay, it's interesting, the choice of the bride for Isaac, not from among the Canaanites.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's quite significant.
Okay, Gail?
What jumped out at me was that he didn't trust his son to pick a bride for himself. He delegated a servant to do it for him. Isaac has no input into this decision, evidently, and because of their weird relationship, I call it weird, strained relationship. It just jumped right out at me. You know, Isaac he's not part of this decision making at all.
I know among the in some Orthodox sects, they still arrange marriages.
But that wasn't normal. Where else in the Tanakh does this come up?
Was it also a custom at that time?
Well,
I do not know.
You might pick a groom for the bride, you know, for the daughter, but this is picking a wife for the son. Again, I don't know. To me, it seems very interesting.
Comment?
Oh, okay. Okay, I was looking at Gail. First Steve and then Bev.
Yeah. Well, it's true. It was a custom in ancient times and perpetuated in the Orthodox community of the shidduch, arranging a match. No, bear with me, Gail. But ideally, the Orthodox now they have some sort of mini date process, and so the girl or the boy have the option of turning it down. They have to say, yeah, we want to continue. That's the way it's done in most Orthodox communities. Now, that said, sometimes they're compelled, and I would reference, I don't have a particular true case, but I would reference the case of, I don't know, those who were in my Zoom program of Molly Pekin. And remember the movie in Yiddish, Yiddle Mitten Fiddle. There's an incident of a bride who's basically compelled to marry an older, not very nice gentleman because her family has debts. And so, there are always circumstances where, the consent of the children isn't sought, but in general, in many ancient cultures, and it continues again, like in the Indian culture, it's not considered appropriate for kids just to go out and date because that could be quote unquote dangerous. The extramarital sex is especially frowned upon. So the parents take care to arrange a match and get kids married before something else happens. So,
Sure.
So that is and was a common practice.
I'm aware of.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I'm aware of the
Gail, and then I
background.
haven't forgotten you, Bev.
I'm aware of the history and the background, Steve. It's not that I didn't know about that, but where else in the Tanakh is a son is a bride selected for a son. I don't know that it comes up in any other place. That's why I thought it was interesting, because I can't think of another case in the Tanakh where this happens.
Well, again, as Marty said, the Tanakh isn't necessarily a comprehensive document. So, they don't always discuss the exact circumstances of everybody getting married when people do get married. But I think it was generally the custom, and it was up to the parent whether they really wanted to get the consent of the child or not, but they didn't have to. That was optional.
Well, but this is a very long story involving this, selection. I can't think of any place else where it's addressed in such detail. I guess that's really my point.
Well, what would have been missing? Before I question that statement, Bev, you've been waiting very patiently.
And this goes on, okay? And you put thy hand under my thigh, all right?
Oh, okay.
This adds seriousness to the whole thing, all right? I have hurts also. According to the biblical idiom, the children are said to be issued from the thigh or loins of the father. Therefore, the formality of placing the hand upon the thigh was taken to signify that if the oath were violated, the children who have issued or might issue from the thigh would avenge the act of disloyalty.
Well, I can, Marty?
Okay, if you want to address that, go ahead.
Yeah, Marty?
Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as I remember, the placing of the hand under the thigh would be close to the testicles, and that's where you get a testimony. The word testimony comes from that, you see, and so they don't.
I think there is something about that.
They don't. When they say thigh, they want to say it in a respectful way, but that's where that whole business of taking testimony, so being honest, and that's where it comes from. It also, in my view, represents the life at its core, because of the fact that what does the testicle produce? It produces life, a life's providing substance. So it's all wrapped up, I believe, in that. I'm not that eloquent in explaining it, but I'm just trying to give it some thought, a thought process.
Yes, those are the derivations of the words we use today, testament, testimony, things like that. We're going to read this as a custom in many stories. It's going to come up again and again. Yes, Larry.
In contemporary American society, Judaism is interpreted often by Fiddler on the Roof to the general public. A big part of that story is matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match, and then his dream, and Yenta the matchmaker. So this is a tradition that carried on through, if not modern times, close to it in the last century.
That's very true. As an aside, I am rereading a book by Pearl Buck, and I highly recommend it. It's peony, like the flower.
Yes.
Peony, and it takes place in China, in ancient China, and the Jews of Kaifeng. And a lot of this is explained in that story, and all the intricacies that go on in the lives of all of the players in the novel. It is especially remarkable. Like in her other books, Pearl Buck went into so much detail about Jewish tradition, Chinese tradition, It's a tremendous eye opener, and I highly recommend the book, Peony. Yes, Helene.
I have to say this because I come from an Orthodox background.
Okay.
Okay, Gail is right. There, so much is attached to this Isaac because the Orthodox male is the leader. Were no females who were leaders. The females had roles to play. It was the men who made the decisions, and still practically is almost. But no, the women today have their say. But how come Isaac had to be helped to get a wife? Other men don't have to be helped. The other men could do it. I think Gail is right. There's so much there. That's because Isaac was decimated and quieted and not even considered as a real male because he had no relationship with his father. That's what I think.
Okay. That's good. That's a good explanation too. Any further comment about what we've been reading? As far as it just as a commentary here is, I know we've been reading the story of Abraham, but is Sarah very does she live in a diminished role or on an equal par with Abraham? You remember some of the story, Abraham is told to listen to his wife. And at other times, his wife tells him things and he concedes. Okay. So I think we have a message there is that it's a blend. It's a blend of, depending on circumstances, as to who is going to be the leader in a marriage from one moment to another. And I think those are good examples. However, as you point out, this is all male oriented. And so the interpretations quite often are going to be from a male standpoint, yes. So I just, as you get to know more about me, I like to play devil's advocate and argue both sides of an issue. So it'll be fun. Yes, Joanne.
In Esther, we read about Esther wanting to talk to the king.
Yes.
And she can't just go in and talk to him. She must kind of stand there until he notices her and asks her to come forward. Now, she is a slave, so that's a whole different setup. But that certainly also gets into the psychic of, you have to maybe ask your male partner what's right, what's wrong, or other things. And yet Esther did so many things to save the people, to save her people.
Yes.
It's a back and forth thing, even with the king.
Mm-hmm. And well, one day we'll have to get into some of these other books, and I hope that class can be established so that we can explore some of the other books in the Tanakh. Any other comments, or should we move on? Yes, Larry.
Okay, back to the fear of marrying a Canaanite.
Yes.
Not necessarily Jewish, although very few were at that point. going back to Haran, we're more likely to have someone thinking along the same lines, but yet not allowing Isaac to go there. So there's a lot of confusion here with loyalty, geography, and also we have the tradition now of the woman being Jewish, the children are Jewish. They're, when did that all happen? Doesn't count here.
Well, I cannot. Steve, do you have any idea about that? Because I don't. I don't.
No, that came
I don't know if it's
later.
a period
That came later. It's a question, for the rabbi. And again, the rabbi was saying the other day that biblically it was actually paternal lineage, and the maternal lineage came later. That's what I recall him saying. But basically, all the caveats about where to choose the wife from. He's not allowed to go back
Right.
to Abraham's original city because he distanced himself from the whole culture of that. He separated himself. So they're a separate, very separate culture now. It's a mini culture at a religion, and so it has to be someone from his. And I'm not sure exactly how it works, but they were obviously marrying within the tribe, so it had to be within the tribe, but it couldn't be back there, at the town of origin.
Well, let's see how the story will unfold. Oh, yes, Michael, you had your hand up.
Oh, yeah. Marty, to revisit the decision-making for a moment, in the Orthodox, I believe that the men today still make the final decision. Again, in the Orthodox, Chabad, the Hasidim, I believe that's still the case. The women may have offer an opinion, but I think the final decision is still made in the Orthodox, in the Jewish society, by the men.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just do not know, and that. But is that, I would assume, I don't know if that's all divisions that fall under Orthodoxy. There's neo-Orthodox and other other movements in the Orthodox tradition. So I don't know if it's just the Chabad or if it's other, if that pertains to all Orthodox. Yes, Steve.
Well, I think it depends. In modern Orthodox society, it depends what area we're talking about, where decisions are made. A lot of families in the Orthodox community, the father or the husband is basically involved in studying Torah, and the woman takes care of all the practicalities, maybe has a store or, so those, that area, they may not even consult their husbands. They're pretty independent decision makers in that area. In the area of religion, I guess the man is presumed to know more because they're the ones who are officially permitted to study Talmud and know more about the religion.
All right. Yes, Helene.
I have relatives, women relatives who've turned down more proposals by men. One particular, she's still single. Women today have a lot more say-so than they ever did, but I believe what you just said, Steve. The men study the Torah. They are the ones who keep the religion alive, and the women take care of it. And women get degrees, and they involve themselves in the cultures, and some do not. You can't make any recipe for the Orthodox because it all depends on the backgrounds and our choices.
Right.
Their women are saying, we have a voice, but it's still the men do the praying, the men do what Steve said, yes.
Yes, Gail.
I just have a quick question. How old is Isaac at this time? I'm reading that he was 40. Oof, but I don't know if that's right.
That may be an answer as to why his dad is taking the matter into his own hands.
Get him out of the tent.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know. There's nothing mentioned. We can come up with our own midrash. Yes, Michael.
Hello?
Yes, Michael.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to clarify one thing. If that's the case, I understand what Steve was saying. However, but if it's the case that the final decision in whatever area, religion or the religion part or whatever, if the men are making the final decision, I certainly don't agree. I do not agree that the final decision should be left to the man. Other than that, it should be discussed. Whatever the thing that they're discussing, the one who makes the decision should be the one that comes up with the best answer. That's generally my point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's very good. Okay, so if there are there any other points of discussion that people want to make, or should we move on? Okay, let's move on with verse 8. If someone would be kind enough to read.
Okay, I can
Sure,
read.
thank you, Steve.
Okay. And if the woman be not willing to follow thee, then thou shalt be clear from this my oath. Only thou shalt not bring my son back thither. I apologize for the archaic language. That's just the way it's translated here. It's our Hertz Bible. And the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning this matter.
Any further discussion before we go on?
And of course, the servant isn't mentioned by name, but he's presumed to be Eliezer.
Eliezer,
The
yes.
head of household type servant.
And as a matter of fact, if you did not have a definite successor after you've passed away, the main male servant at that time was the rightful heir. So this is why this is being undertaken by Abraham, so that everything would pass on to his son and to Isaac and so forth. So now what we're going to enter in the story is a series of repetitions from different perspectives. The question was raised, why do we go on in so much detail why is this story drawn out? Well, we're going to enter a series of stories taken from the different perspectives of the characters in the story. Okay? So if somebody would want to start with verse 10, maybe somebody has a more modern version rather than Hertz.
May I?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, Joanne.
Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and set out, taking with him all the bounty of his master. And he made his way to An-Neharaim, to the city of Nahor. He made the camels kneel down by the well outside the city at evening time, the time when women come out to draw water. And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, grant me good fortune this day, and deal graciously with my master Abraham. Here I stand by the spring, as the daughters of the townsmen come out to draw water. Let the maiden to whom I say, please lower your jar that I may drink, and who replies, drink, and I will also water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have decreed for your servant Isaac. Thereby shall I know that you have dealt graciously with my master.
Let's stop at that point. Any comments?
Well,
Yes,
yeah.
Steve.
yeah. Well, and the common interpretation of this is that it's a little bit of a test to find a virtuous maiden who's worthy of Isaac, who not only volunteers to give him water, but gives his animals water and shows compassion for animals, which is actually a very important Torah precept, is kindness
Yes.
to animals as well. That returns in various places in the Bible and actually Hertz mentions it also. That the Talmud declares that a man must not sit down to his meal before giving food to his animals. So very, very important precept, and sort of an indicator of virtue in this case.
That's very true. This story, are there parallels to this in other stories in the Torah about people finding a wife at a well? Anyone? Yes.
I would assume that's part of tradition, that the woman only kind of came out of from the tent, etc., to go to the well, that she wasn't just going here, there, and yon, but mainly was within the tent or within the area.
Who else finds his wife at a well? Yeah. Oh, yes, Suzanne.
Wasn't it Rachel? And what's his name? Jacob?
Okay. Yes. There's another important one.
Moses.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So this becomes important. And as we're going to read about the story of Isaac, this is going to have a great significance in his life. Okay, and then maybe when we get to that point, we'll discuss some of the traditions of that relate to wells. So any further comments about what we have just read? Steve, was that a raised hand? No.
No.
Okay. Okay.
But there's a comment from Grace that you can read.
Oh.
You see that?
Yes. Yeah. Grace typed in that watering holes are still a familiar place to gather conversations, and seek persons of interest. Yes. That's true.
Or the office water cooler, which may go by the wayside.
That's right.
In the age of COVID, that may not be happening anymore.
By the wayside.
Yes, it's interesting. Also at board meetings, one of the things that is provided everyone usually is a bottle of water.
Uh-huh.
If so that people don't have to take a break and go to the water cooler, but it's symbolic. It's symbolic. So if somebody would like to continue the reading for verse 15. Anyone? Okay.
I'll continue if you want.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, it's Joanne.
Joanne.
Oh, Joanne mentioned that. Okay. I thought Chris had the Tanakh held. You know.
I did have it, but I was never.
Okay, Joanne, you go ahead.
The servant had scarcely finished speaking when Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, came over with her jar on her shoulder. The maiden was very beautiful, a virgin whom no man had known. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up. The servant ran toward her and said, "Please, let me sip a little water from your jar." "Drink, my lord," said Rebekah, and she quickly lowered her jar upon her hand and let him drink. When she had let him drink his fill, she said, "I will also draw for your camels," until they finished drinking. Quickly emptying her jar into the trough, she ran back to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels.
Okay, let's stop there, and let's go back. First of all, Bethuel, the son of Milcah and Nahor. Okay. Who else is related to them?
Well, Nahor is the brother of Abraham.
Okay. And who else is mentioned in the Abraham story? That is
Lot.
Who mentioned that? That's right, Lot.
Lot, yeah.
That's right. So this is going to be a family affair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Marty.
Yes.
Excuse me. Laban is also Rebecca's brother.
Yes, that's going to come up. Yes.
Yeah, and he's the father of Leah and Rachel.
Yes.
Yeah.
That comes up later. Yes.
Yeah, but Lot is a different brother of Abraham. His father was Haran, Haran, Haran.
Haran. Yes.
Haran. I'm never sure how to pronounce the words.
Okay, thank you for that correction. Any comments that anyone has about what's happening here? This portion of the story.
Comment?
Yes, Steve.
Yeah.
Just sort of, again, going back to the old traditions of the Middle East, marrying within the tribe, which of course, as we know, is a risk for genetic diseases, but continues to be a custom within the Middle East. Arab villages in Israel usually originate from a few brothers who settle together, and people within an Arab village tend to be cousins, sometimes distant cousins. There's still marriages within the confines of the village, and there are in Israel some interesting genetic diseases that are ordinarily quite rare that pop up in the Arab community because of that. Marrying cousins, sometimes not always even knowing, what exactly the relation is, but there are relations. So, there's sort of a feeling of community within the tribe. We Jews were also a bit tribal. So, of course, there are consequences to that.
Yeah.
And that's what, of course, the Eliezer was charged with finding a wife from within the tribe. It had to be within the tribe.
So you mentioned Eliezer, so his prayer mentioned just
Right.
a few verses earlier. Okay, what is it's almost instantaneously.
Mhm.
He finishes his prayer to God, and Rebecca shows up, and she says the prayer is almost verbatim
Right.
from what he prayed. Okay, so obviously his faithfulness to Abraham and to God
To God.
another subject that could be discussed because what is going on here is Eliezer praying for himself, or is he praying to honor Abraham, or is he praying that he will just be successful in the operation, or is he is this going to be a message to everyone that be careful what you ask for? The inverse. Yes, Chris.
Well, I think it's all of the above, Marty, because
Okay.
he needed to fulfill Abraham's concern about a child for his offspring. So, I mean, a bride for an offspring. But it was also the trust that he had in the only one that can really make that possible, which was Adonai, God. And not only did he trusted God to provide for this bride, but he put it just exactly the way he requested it. And that tells me that God is concerned about the desires of your heart, and he doesn't overlook those things, but he considers those things as granting a prayer for Eliezer.
Okay. Very good. Yes, Ruth Ann, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just thinking, if he's sitting there on his camel and all these young women are coming to the well,
Yeah.
he felt very overwhelmed. Like, how in the world am I supposed to pick out somebody without, meeting them or talking to them or whatever, whatever he needed to do. I mean, so he needed some guidance, something, like I said, because he was overwhelmed, I think, more than anything.
Okay. Another consideration for just to think about and to try to stimulate some thinking here. What when we said that the servant, I just blanked on the name. Is it Eliezer? Eliezer.
Yeah.
He is. He's saying something that he has learned. He's a servant. What did he have to go through to get to this point? Yes, Chris.
I'm sorry, I keep raising my hand, but I definitely think that he has taken those examples from Abraham, living in the midst of Abraham and seeing how God dealt with Abraham. And so he knew he could trust God. And I had that discussion earlier with a friend, but it's true. It's worthy. God is worthy because I've seen him do this to my master. And so if it works for my master, it works for me. And that was a reference that he had from God in the life of Abraham. So
What other what other procedure did he go through to also share in this covenant?
Well, he promised him that, you mean like putting his hand under his thigh? Is that
Well,
a-
that's
Circumcised.
Oh, he also got circumcised,
He was
presumably.
got
Oh,
circumcised.
okay,
That's
okay.
right.
Mhm.
And so
It was all Abraham's household.
Well, everybody got circumcised. It
Yes.
wasn't just Eliezer.
So he has seen the examples. He's been very observant of the
Right.
examples, as you point out, of that are set forth by his. I don't like to use the word master, but by Abraham, and
Right.
that was a big influence on him. Yes. And so this tells us a little bit about Eliezer too, that he has faith. Otherwise, why would he pray to the same God?
Right.
Okay,
Most definitely.
this is an important
Marty?
thing he has to do for Abraham. Yes, Steve.
Yep. Eliezer appears in a very, very positive light, in spite of the fact that he's a servant, technically, and it's quite a common name among Jewish boys for them to be named. If you have your choice
Mm-hmm.
to name your Jewish child, you might want to name him for a superstar like Abraham, but there are plenty who get the name Eliezer because he was regarded as virtuous. That this is you're hoping that the your child who gets a particular name will sort of acquire the virtues of that character.
That is a tradition. Yes. Larry, did you have your hand up briefly?
My Hebrew name is Eliezer.
Well, there you go. You're an Eliezer. Yeah.
So, but it
It fits you, Larry.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
is another message here. Is also another message here. Yeah, yes, Joanne.
I've been thinking of Rebecca, and I'm wondering if she does not walk with God, and she came to the well, first one, and she said it almost the same words,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems to me like there was a communication with God with all of this.
Okay. And it could be because she's saying the exact words, or is Eliezer's prayer being answered by God because God knows that that's the answer she's going to give.
Right.
Perfect.
I'm just saying there are different ways of looking at it. There's no one way that's more correct than the other, but it is. But there are different ways of viewing that. But what does it tell us about a slave? If this were at the time of Moses, okay, what is this story also relating to about slaves? The lowest, class in any culture. God is going to listen to them, hear them, and heed what they have to say. And things may also, but also they can be very wise individuals. So what is that? So if we extend that a little bit, if we recognize that people of a lower stature in society can have this characteristic, wouldn't it be wise to treat everyone the same?
Absolutely. Yeah, good point.
Just looking at little, poor Eliezer and how he goes about doing things.
Right.
So Yes, Joanne.
Just, are you interchanging the words servant and slave? Because he's a servant, but he could just been way down
Okay.
in the hierarchy.
Yes, but even a slave may be very wise.
Yes, I
A
agree.
stranger may be very wise.
Yes.
So before we jump to conclusions,
Right.
maybe we should really think about that. Yes, Bev.
Look at the way people became slaves. They were captured.
Mhm.
Kings and queens became slaves because they were unfortunate enough to run into people who were bigger and stronger and rougher and captured them and took them away.
Mhm.
So,
So we could have lost.
slaves are the same as everyone else.
We could have lost a lot of wise people over the centuries.
That's right.
Yes, Suzanne.
I think it shows that God is not impressed by earthly men titles. I don't think he cares about that. I think he cares what's in a person's heart. And it's very clear that Eleazar was a very faithful man.
Yes.
And you know, what his earthly station was made no difference to God.
Okay. I think we're all saying something very similar. Very good. Any further discussion? Yes, Michael.
I'm listening. I don't have a text here, but I don't mean to diverse, but I'm thinking about water, how water played a very important part in Jewish history. Now we know water is life-sustaining. I know that, but there are certain things that come to mind. Moses was pulled from the water.
Correct.
Moses met his wife, their water. Uh, the uh, the Red Sea opened so the Israelites could pass, and then it closed so they could no longer be hurt. And I'm sure there are other instances that I just don't know or don't remember. So that's really what came to mind, and I thought that I would share that with you.
And that's going to be a theme that it has been discussed. I wanted to hold off on that particular discussion until we get to we get to more of the stories of the different wells that Isaac digs. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we can come back to that because it's very important. Anyway, if somebody would like to read, we've covered any other discussion, I think, before we move on. I should always ask that. Okay, then if somebody would like to begin reading verse 21.
Yeah, I can read.
Okay, Suzanne.
And and the man wondering at her held his peace, to wit whether the Lord made his journey prosperous or not. And it came to pass, as the camels had done drinking, that the man took a golden earring of a half shekel weight, and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekel weight of gold, and said, Whose daughter art thou? Tell me, I pray thee, is there room in thy father's house for us to lodge in? And she said unto him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, which she bare unto Nahor. She said moreover unto him, We both have straw and provender enough, and room to lodge in. And the man bowed his head down and worshiped the Lord. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham, who hath not left destitute my master of his mercy and his truth. I, being in the way, and the Lord led me to the house of my master's brethren. And
Okay, let's stop at that point.
Okay.
Any discussion, Suzanne, or I'll let you have first dibs at this since you finished.
Well, I think it's important to note that he thanked God for answering his prayer. I think that there's a tendency sometimes that we ask God for things, and then when they happen, a lot of times we forget to thank him.
Very good point. Very good point. Any other yes, Gail?
Yeah, I'm reading from the women's commentary on this particular section. It said, although the servant asked about her father's house, she goes to her mother's house. And at the end of the chapter, she moves into Sarah's tent. The mention of women's domain occurs only in Genesis 24, the book of Ruth, and that's it. So it's just interesting that she's going to her mother's tent, not her father's, even though the servant inquired about the father.
This becomes very, I again refer you to this, the novel by Pearl Buck.
Mm-hmm.
It will show you about the tradition. The story takes place in the 1400s. Okay. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, just as long as we're talking about novels that sort of enlighten on what's going on behind the scenes, there's also The Red Tent.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't recall the author, but that's a very sort of feminist perspective, and
It is.
also gives you sort of more detail about the whole family, as I recall, including, the fact that the women were not necessarily wholly monotheistic, that the women sort of had their little idols still, even though officially they had this new religion, there was still a lot of Canaanite practice, which sort of makes this story a little more plausible.
Very good. Very good. And there's a difference in the translation. In my version, it is not an earring, but a nose ring.
Yes.
That is given. Why?
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Is that considered to be betrothed?
Well, it is the nose ring, a gift of special prominence that everyone would see. So, and it was about a fifth of an ounce, the way it's described. And if we were to advance it into today's point, also it shows that a person is of elevated status.
Okay.
Okay, an earring doesn't do it at that time, but the nose ring does.
Marty?
Yes.
If you jump ahead to 47, and I put the ring upon her nose and bracelets upon her hands.
Yes.
So, it refers back to this.
It does refer. That's why I said we're going to read this whole thing again and again, and each time from slightly different perspectives. That's right. So so what's happening is that she's receiving a lot already without everything on the camels, the train of camels or anything, but her family, what they will receive as gifts. But in some interpretations, it has been everything. It says back in verse 10 that Eliezer has taken all the bounty of his master.
Right.
Okay, so it's not just these items, but everything that Abraham has that he can trade, okay, or give away. So any commentary there? So let's go on. Eliezer doesn't take any credit for this. He just says that Abraham and God, he's following their direction, and that his prayers have also been answered. And so what happens if we pick up in verse 28? Chris, I saw that you had a copy of the
Yeah,
talk
I
that
do. Okay, 28 says, the maiden ran. I'm sorry, I'm having a bad voice today.
Okay.
But a maiden ran. Oh, are you there?
Yes.
I lost everything here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can all hear you.
Okay, well, let me read it then. The maiden ran and told all of this to her mother's household. Now Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out to the men at the spring. When he saw the nose ring and the bands on his sister's arm, and when he heard his sister Rebekah say, "Thus the man spoke to me," he went up to the man who was still standing beside the camels at the spring. "Come in, O blessed of the Lord," he said. "Why do you remain outside when I have made ready the house and the place for the camels?" So the man entered the house, and the camels were unloaded. The camels were given straw and fed, and the water was brought to the basins and the feet of the men with him. But when the food was set before him, he said, "I will not eat until I have told you my tale." He said, "Speak then."
Okay, let's stop at that point. So Rebecca is running to her mother's household, and then there's a statement about Laban or Laban, and Laban sees the nose ring and the bands on his sister's arms. And what else happens, and why is this important, and what do we learn about Laban?
Well, he recognizes that Eliezer is the man of status, that he has come from far away, and then he has spoken already to Rebecca. But he understands that he is a special person, I think.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Joanne, you had your hand up.
Okay. Last evening we were watching in the Americas. Anyway, they were in, I believe, Brazil, but up in the mountains. And the women made bands for the arms, not nose rings, but purses, etc. And I think those bands that were given to Rebecca, she recognized as being from her family.
Interesting. Okay, yes, Larry.
Another example of welcome the stranger.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
And we see this throughout.
Okay,
True.
very good. Any other comments? Well, why does the Torah take time to say that Laban sees these on all of these they're more than trinkets, sees these objects on his sister, and and then he answers, then he speaks. Why does the Bible go and make that statement in that order? Why didn't he just say, "Oh, welcome"? What is that telling us about the mind of Laban?
Right.
Larry, were you going to say?
Okay, he lacked the true spirit of hospitality because there was also an interest here in the riches that the stranger can offer.
Oh,
Obviously, the stranger has a lot of wealth, and what's in it for me?
Yes.
uh-huh.
Okay, so because this is going to come up again when we
Absolutely, yeah.
and we'll have this discussion again. Yes, Bev.
I think he's expecting a proposal.
Okay, and do you want to elaborate?
Because it seems to be a larger gift than you would give for a drink of water. And you would probably, if you were going to pay for a room, you would pay the mother or the father. And it just seems that way. And she's a lovely young gal, and well,
Yeah.
yeah.
This reminds me of who is that writer of she's a novelist and she writes a lot of romance novels. Very popular gal. I just blanked on her name.
Steele? I forgot her first name. Steele.
Well, there are several different ones, but this one, Danielle Steele.
Yeah, that's the one she's talking about.
That's right, and I think that we're entering into a format for future romance novels. They have to include all of these
The
characters.
villain, they have to
That's
include
right.
the villain.
The formula for the future romance novels is being laid down here. I just tossed that out as an aside.
Marty,
Yes.
I just thank you for bringing that up because I missed that one many times. However, I do know that Laban was shrewd in the way that he acted with almost all his commitments. But that was a great point to really see. He was scanning him. He was checking out how much money that this guy had. And you're right. He didn't just say, welcome, come on in, you're in our home. But he was scanning him. And I liked that because he was showing true color from the beginning.
Right. From his story that will wind up later on as we get into one of
Yeah.
That's right. Isaac's sons. That's right.
Right.
As we read the story of Jacob.
Jacob.
Any other discussion? Why do you think is it just because of the fact that Eliezer wants to tell the tale, or could there be another motive to his story? Why doesn't he just sit down and eat with everyone that's been requested? Okay, I mean, there's something we can say about this too. Yes, Joanne.
I'm just thinking tradition. That it is tradition to give the story where you're coming from and why you're there and how hard the trip has been and that sort of thing. While you drink wine, probably. In other words, a prelude to the meal.
Okay. Yes, Steve.
Yeah. Well, again, he's just showing that he is, Abraham's loyal servant, and he's on a mission. And number one is the mission. Abraham really trusted him. Abraham gave him all his wealth. He could have just absconded with it, totally. But he is he's on a mission, and that comes first. It comes before eating. It comes before anything.
Exactly.
He has to find the wife for Isaac. That's what he's been charged with, and that's what he's going to do first, before anything else happens.
A very good point. Very
Yeah.
good point. Suppose if you do have a choice, you have a responsibility to fulfill, but now the designated head of the household here, Laban, is inviting you to sit down. Which is more important to Laban, the tale, or let's get on with things? It becomes fair. This is, if you've already seen your sister receive a very handsome gift, there has to be more to it. But I'm not interested in what's motivated you, but let's get on with things. What do you think about that? Because that's going to come up again with when we meet Laban again. Steve, what does Laban mean in Hebrew?
It's interesting because it
Yeah.
actually means, it means white. It means white, and I'm wondering if he was an albino.
Ah.
or maybe just what they call a ginger, and relatively pale of complexion, But that's what Laban means, is white.
Yeah.
Is that what you were looking for? You were looking for something else?
Well,
No, that's one of the things, but that's important. But is it just that a person is white, or that you can have a personality that's very dark? You can also have a personality that is, let's take the opposite of that.
maybe bland, or
You know what? I'll
No,
look it up in the etymological
Yeah.
dictionary.
Okay, but I'm just saying how the word can be used in English.
and
If
the meaning.
somebody
Yeah.
it could be physical, but it could also maybe be suggestive of a different characteristic.
Right.
When something is black, what is happening in physics? Wendy, do you have, is David there?
Are you talking about personality wise or skin
Oh, wait,
color?
Wendy, you're muted.
I know. I was just listening to the conversation. All black in physics is like the absence of everything. Like a black hole, it sucks it all in.
Right. What happens if something is white? What is happening to light if something comes back to your eyes as white?
Blinds you.
Well, if it's blinding light, yeah, it really could, because if it's super, super bright,
Yeah.
because you'd have to shield your eyes from white light, and if you just came out of black light, your pupils are so dilated.
It will blind you, right?
But white light is the reflection of all wavelengths of light.
That's
Right.
True. That's true.
So they're reflecting back what you may want to see.
Mm-hmm.
Not exactly truthful.
No, it's your
If
perception.
if the object holds on to other wavelengths and reflects something one wavelength back, you will see it as green or red or yellow or blue.
Hummingbirds.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an emotion associated with each one of those colors.
Yes.
So what
Well,
happened? So the word came out bland. Well, if something comes back white, you can't discern the true nature of the character that you're dealing with.
Right.
So
Black.
does that feed into? I'm stretching a lot, but
That's a good stretch. That's a good stretch.
but,
Well,
but
now they're often
there's,
used.
there's another aspect to this. It's not just the physical, but also the emotional and the philosophical possibilities.
I can understand that. Sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
because we're going to learn more about that when we
Plan,
go to the other stories. First, Steve, then Chris.
But Michael,
Yeah,
Michael,
yeah, but also,
Michael
but
just had
also
his
more
hand up.
simply, more simply, the albinos, assuming that maybe he was unusually pale or albino, in our history, we tend to jump to conclusions. We tend to be a little racist. We tend to make quick judgments about people. Albinos in the past were looked on very negatively and with great suspicion. So if he was physically markedly different than everyone else, then it's already within the story, within the dramatic context of the story, he's already, this is a character, Yeah, this guy isn't totally okay. Yeah.
but maybe it was more than in his skin color. Maybe it was more on his heart or his mind or his personality. He was more that way, and maybe that's what the name had to be called. That, Lot.
Yeah. Even though white as an internal characteristic
Sure.
is intuitively seen, that's not generally, with all due respect to Marty's drosh on it, what most of us think, if you're white-hearted, black-hearted is very negative.
Very negative.
If you have a pure white soul, nobody's thinking automatically, gee, this is a real, watch this guy, he's no good,
Right.
That sounds kind of positive, actually.
Yes,
Right.
the connotation.
Marty was
Just
using the white. Marty was using the white in a very derogatory kind of a concept, and I think that could also apply to Laban a lot closer into the personality description of the Bible than the white, and there was something different about the guy, that's for sure.
So anyway, what is Laban's response to Eliezer's request to continue, that Eliezer has a tale to unfold? Okay. And what is Laban's response? Is it an elaborate response or curt response?
No, he said, go ahead, spill it all.
Yeah, just speak then. That's right. As opposed to, oh, I forgot, I should have done the following. I should have been more hospitable or things like that. Why are you here? It would certainly seem to come before a dinner.
The gifts, exactly.
So that's another insight into Laban's personality. So any further discussion on Laban? If there isn't, we will go on with verse 34. Oh, Joanne, I'm sorry, you had your hand up first.
Just one thought. I have a nephew, and when he was born, his hair was totally white, and until maybe he was 10. I mean, we're talking white. And when I heard the name White, I thought immediately of the hair, and I didn't. Oh, that's sexy.
You like that?
Yeah.
That's
We all saw that.
it's a genetic trait.
Recorded even.
It's called piebaldism. Piebaldism, but it usually isn't. It's usually like a strand white. It's not usually the whole scalp.
Yeah, but
That's true. It was the hair was white. I mean, really.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about just sort of a strand is white. I believe that's piebaldism.
unusual.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the whole scalp being white.
So how Joanne, how long did that white hair persist?
But until he's around 10. It
Wow.
was white. And then it slowly started turning, and now, you know, now he's 56, so it's probably getting white again. I haven't seen
Oh, that's good. So let's go on with verse 34.
Oh, with you?
And- uh,
I'll read.
Okay, Joanne, thank you.
And so the servant starts telling his story.
Right.
I am Abraham's servant, he began. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become rich. He has given him sheep and cattle, silver and gold, male and female slaves, camels and asses. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore my master a son in her old age, and he has assigned to him everything he owns. Now my master made me swear, saying, you shall not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I dwell, but you shall go to my father's house, to my kindred, and get a wife for my son. And I said to my master, what if the woman does not follow me? He replied to me, the Lord, whose ways I have followed, will send his angel with you and make your errand successful. And you will get a wife for my son from his kindred, from my father's house. Thus only shall you be freed from my adjuration.
Mhm.
If when you come to my kindred they refuse you, only then shall you be free from my adjuration.
Okay. Any comments at this point? Since Joanne, since you read, do you have any comments?
I'm amazed by all this. I think I haven't worked it out in any way. I'm just
Well, what is
floored by this, that you go to somebody and tell them all this story of your master.
But what it also is at play here? Is it just oh, I'm here because I was sent to find a wife for my
No.
my master's son?
No.
No, what's going on here? Yes, Chris.
Of course, to me, the first thing it comes through is to give honor and glory to God. First of all, for arriving in that position, for being in that position, for delivering the request of his master, for everything. But he is making sure they understand that it has nothing to do with him, but it was all God ordained. God God's doing. That's how I see it.
Okay. Any other comments about that? Does he also honor Abraham in all of this?
Yes, of course.
Yes, but that is something. It's sort of like there's a higher authority at play here, and you know, I've been told my adjuration was that if you disagree and you send me on my way, then it's left up to me to decide who is going to become Isaac's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So any other comments? Yes, Joanne.
Well, Abraham kind of left his family. This is a way of telling his family how much money he's made and what he's done and accomplished since last they saw each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more than that. As Chris pointed out, It
Yes.
it was with he really is giving credit to God for to allowed. It was God who allowed Abraham to attain all of that wealth.
Mhm.
Yes. Suzanne, I think you've had your hand up for a while.
Yes. It's, I think it's important to note that it says he has given Isaac, that Abraham has given Isaac all his wealth. And there's no mention of Ishmael at all, that he would receive anything when his father passes.
That's another thing that is correct. Grace, did you want to expand on what you mentioned here, that he knows he must tell why he is here on this mission? Did you want to spend a little time expanding on that?
Hi.
Hi.
I think that because he was so dedicated to Abraham, that he really wasn't recognized. I mean, I have a cheat sheet in my Jewish study Bible.
Okay.
It reflects information that, some of it which we have spoken about, that he really wasn't considered a slave servant as much as he was a chief advisor to Abraham.
It's a good point.
That was all that I was trying to type out, and my brain thinks faster than my fingers type. So forgive any errors that may have bestowed my poor typing skills. Thank you. That was it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, just a note on the Hebrew that's used, because we're reading in translation, and Hertz called my attention to this, that they keep using the word maiden in English, but actually the word in Hebrew that's used here in this later text is alma, which is specifically a maiden of marriageable age. So, they're not just talking about her generically. As a young girl, they're talking her as a bride, very, as we say in Yiddish, tachlis, straight to the point,
Okay. Good. That's very helpful.
Marty,
Yes.
by the way, I did some research. That's why I've been jumping up and down. When we get to Genesis 25:19, it says that Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah.
Okay. Thank you.
Just for clarification.
Good.
Okay. So he's either 39 or 40 when this is happening. Okay.
We have to be that accurate, right?
Steve, or somebody, I wish the rabbi were here. When in Hebrew, the letters and the numbers are there are numbers associated with all the letters.
Gematria.
And
Gematria.
Gematria.
Sort of a little bit of an oddball Talmudic tradition. Yeah.
Yes.
And also, I guess, Kabbalistic.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes. And did you want to make any mention of 40? Why? What and the letter mem?
A 40.
The letter mem, that means. Do you know what the nice thing about
There's a lot of
Gematria?
things going on with
The
40.
nice thing about Gematria, Marty, is you can prove almost anything.
That's right.
Okay, so I have no idea what you have in mind. You're going to have to say it.
Well, this 40 comes up repetitively
Yeah.
in many stories. The Noah flood.
Okay. Yeah, it does.
The age of certain individuals, and we're reading one of them. when we speak of names of Moses, there's a change that's going to occur. This in years past, I've often said, if we want to look at it from the standpoint of Hebrew, isn't Mem a dead center in the alphabet?
If you say so, I haven't checked.
Okay. Well, it is.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it.
And it which raises another question. You can either, from the center, you can either go backwards or you can go forwards from that point, or you may. So the story is going to be. This is a critical, pivotal point. This is a pivotal point in the story here. So although we don't emphasize and have much to talk about. This is a very important deal in Isaac's life at the age of 40.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, in a more negative sense, he is middle-aged.
Yes.
Middle.
And which is going to come up again as we go into the Isaac story. Yes, Gail.
The number 40 is mentioned 157 times in Scripture. The number 40 symbolizes a period of testing, trial, or probation.
Right.
Good. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you. So this is another way of looking at this, because of why 40 is so important. Okay. Yes, Joanne.
I'm sorry. I'm still back on Rebecca, and Anne has come obviously to offer her marriage. She must be with her mom and sisters and that family. All the women in the kitchen are very much listening to this story from the servant. And when they discover all these many riches, I think that would turn any young girl's head, to go fairly easily. She's following God, but she also very much knows that she's not going to just go to a tent in the desert and hope she has water.
Excellent point too. So what goes, any other comments at this point? If not, why don't we read on? What's going through Laban's mind? Now he knows that he has to make a decision or he's going to lose everything. Okay, from the financial standpoint.
Right.
Okay, that's been stated now. And so what is his answer to Bethuel?
Laban or Nahor? Was it Nahor the father? Or was it Laban?
Yes,
Nahor's the
Nahor
mother.
is the father.
There's some commentary that Nahor had already passed away at this point.
Passed away. Okay. I was not
Or
aware.
we don't know if
I was not
Laban
notified of his death. Sorry.
we just don't know if Laban is seizing the opportunity.
Okay.
Or if Nahor, because I'm going to read the commentary here in Cloud. Some believe that the name was added later and that the story reads more easily if we assume that Laban acted as the head of the family because Bethuel had already died.
Okay.
It's more likely, however, that this is a trace of an earlier societal pattern in which the mother's household played a sizable role.
All right.
So now what is Laban going to request? Let's start on verse 50. Oh, no, I'm sorry. 40.
42.
I think we're back at 42.
Marty, could I ask a question first?
Yes.
Could you look in your Plout and see if there's any commentary on the name Laban? If he has any reference at all or any commentary on it. Hertz just ignored it.
Yeah, he ignores it too. He does not comment. Let me just look under one other category because he sometimes pulls things out.
I'm just wondering if anybody else who has a commentary has a
Nope.
Bible with commentary has a commentary on the name.
On the name, yeah.
Let me go to one other source since you raised that. Oops. Got it. Just. I'm sorry that it's always when you try to find the.
It's just odd. It strikes me as odd because it's a very odd name.
Okay, so this is in a commentary by Sforna. It talks to when it talks about Rebecca, it talks about the comments about her mother's household. In this society, a girl would ordinarily refer to her home as her mother's house. With regard to Laban, it says that Lavan means white, and in the feminine form is Lavanah, the white one, is a poetic term also for the moon.
For the moon.
For the moon. And that's going to come up also if when we get to when Isaac sees Rebecca, we can have another discussion Kabbalistically what they have interpreted some of this. But the association is in keeping with other names in Abraham's family that have a connection with the lunar cult, such as Torah, which has connected with Yareach.
Yareach is another word for moon, yes.
Right. Sarah, the Hebrew form of the Akkadian Saratu, queen, is also used of the consort of the moon god Sin, and Milcah from the Akkadian Malkatu, princess, the name of Sin's daughter. So it's an interesting play on the moon, and this comes up again and again Kabbalistically. It also he just says that Laban's hospitality appears to match that of his sister, except for the impression that he is motivated by greed. The narrative here is anticipating the character of Laban as revealed later in his dealings with Jacob, which we're going to get to probably in another few months.
That's where we're going.
The speech that is given by Eliezer is very long and repetitive. I'm sort of summarizing here because I don't want to take up all the time with this. So far in the story, the girl herself has not said, "I'm Rebecca." She does not reveal her name. But how the servant knew it is never stated. Perhaps he overheard her being addressed. No, but that's all commentary. Laban and Bethuel. It is not only strange that Laban takes precedence over his father, but also that the father plays no further role in the proceedings. So that's why some say Bethuel had already died. But another interpretation is that Laban sort of promoted himself to be head of the household.
Okay.
Okay.
Take your pick. Take your pick.
Okay.
Yes, Ruthann.
We get down to 50. It says that Bethuel spoke, so he couldn't be dead. But how old could he be? I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, Abraham is, how old at this point? And, how old are his brothers
Brother.
or brother or whatever, I mean, could Laban have been taking over pretty much because his father was just so old and maybe infirm or something that he couldn't do it?
And the fact that Laban was greedy and wanted to run things, that makes sense.
Well,
very much.
I mean, who knows? Maybe we're not looking at, I mean, we know the rest of the story, but maybe, we don't really know how greedy he was, or how much he's just thinking that he's trying to do best by his family since his father can't do it. Who knows?
That is one of the interpretations.
Sure.
I sort of didn't finish all of the different commentaries. It was also suggested that the father, Bethuel, might have been too enfeebled. You were addressing that, and incompetent to act, and the son had also been given the duty, but also in the Near Eastern texts, that in the patriarchal society, the brother had the important duties and powers in regard to his sisters.
No.
So this is not necessarily out of the ordinary.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And that there also exist legal documents that detail the joint exercise of authority by mother and son in the marriage of a daughter.
Okay.
Marty, I've got a commentary by Altar.
Yes, please.
He says, the convincing conclusion of many textual critics is that the appearance of Bethuel is a later scribal or redactoral insertion, because the surrounding narrative clearly suggests that he's dead when these events occur. Otherwise, it is hard to explain why the home to which Rebecca goes running is referred to as her mother's house.
Her mother's house.
It is her brother who is the male who speaks exclusively on behalf of the family. Only her mother and brother are mentioned, never her father, so on and so forth.
Right.
So he's convinced it's probably a scribal thing.
Okay, Steve, yes.
Yeah. Just getting back to the, tradition and culture of the Middle East, and assuming that perhaps brothers take a very controlling role sometimes of their sisters, especially all the issues surrounding marriage. There was also a very tragic and negative control that's exerted in the Middle East, where often, if the family suspects that the sister has quote unquote defamed the family by having premarital sex, they will kill her. And actually in Jordan, that's
that's still
sort of that's sort of a basis. That's a defense.
Yeah.
And people can get off legally from this murder because it was she had defamed the family.
Yes, the honor killings, yes.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a case in Israel where a father and son both were put in jail because they both said that they had done it? They killed the daughter, the quote sister.
And this was an Arab family in Israel.
In Israel, and the father and
it's
son
possible.
were both in jail because they both said they did it. So whatever.
Yeah, and in Israel, of course, that's not recognized as a defense. But and in Jordan, unless I'm mistaken, it was at least was, perhaps still is, a legal defense.
I think it still is. Yeah.
Well, we've only covered half of the.
Our customary quota, I guess.
That's right. We've only covered half of Eliezer's discussion. So I think due to the time factor, we probably should stop here